Hi, Joshua here with Truth and Mercy Baptist Ministries. Is there a contradiction in Leviticus 11 in the King James Bible when it refers to bats as fowl or birds? Of course not. The King James Bible is perfectly true and accurate. There are no contradictions or mistranslations or errors, but there are people who reject the authority of God's Word. They reject God. They don't like the idea of a book that can tell them what to do and how to live, and so they find rather silly excuses for dismissing it. And this is definitely one of the sillier ones, but let's read the passage and discuss the perceived problems here. In Leviticus 11, God is giving his dietary law to Israel to show that they are a different nation. They are his chosen people. They were not to be like the other nations, and they were to eat accordingly. They were to put a difference between clean and unclean meats. And here's what it says in chapter 11 of Leviticus about the bird animals. Verses 13 through 20, it says, "And these are they which ye shall have an abomination among the fowls. They shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, and the ostrich, and the osprey, and the vulture, and the kite after his kind, every raven after his kind, and the owl, and the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind, and the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gear-eagle, and the stork, the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. All fowls that creep going upon all four shall be an abomination unto you." Okay, so it calls bat a fowl just like eagles and owls. So if the Bible here, the King James, is calling the bat a fowl, and we know that bats are mammals, isn't this an error in the Bible? Isn't this a mistranslation or something? Of course, the answer is rather simple. The Linnaean system by which we classify organisms is a man-made and relatively recent invention. God is not bound by it. Carolus Linnaeus may have classified birds as flying creatures with feathers, but God's classification doesn't necessarily follow those parameters. God says bats are fowl or birds because they fly, and he created them. He ought to know. He ought to have the right of classifying his own creatures. Not that the Linnaean system is wrong, it's just not the same as the one in the Bible. So what we have here is simply two different methods of classifying animals, not an error in the Bible. The King James Bible accurately translates exactly what God's Word should say, that bats are birds, according to God's system. In school, we may follow a different man-made system of organizing and classifying creatures, but in the Bible, God calls them fowls, and that's good enough for me. If you have any other suggestions for perceived Bible contradictions, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. God bless.